And Washington, D.C. has rolled out the red carpet for the Indian Prime Minister. U.S. President Joe Biden welcomes Narendra Modi as he looks to tighten his relations with the leader of a nation seen as an important force in Asia for decades to come. The pomp-filled state visit marks their 10th meeting since Biden came into the office. After leading the celebrations of the International Day of Yoga at the United Nations headquarters, the Prime Minister reached Washington. He visited the National Science Foundation with U.S. First Lady Jill Biden. At the event, the Indian Prime Minister invited American students to come to India. According to the White House, more than 200,000 Indian students were studying in the United States as of last year.
हमने नेशनल एजुकेशन पॉलिसी में शिक्षा और स्किलिंग को इंटीग्रेट किया है। हमने स्कूलों में लगभग 10,000 अटल टिंकरिंग लैब्स उसकी स्थापना की है, जहां बच्चों को तरह तरह के इनोवेशन करने के लिए सभी प्रकार की सुविधाएं दी जा रही हैं। हमने युवा एंटरप्रेन्योर्स को प्रोत्साहित करने के लिए स्टार्टअप इंडिया मिशन शुरू किया है। हमारा लक्ष्य इस डेकेड को टेक डेकेड या टेकेड बनाने का है।
To ensure that all Indians, especially girls, which I love, have the opportunity to pursue an education and gain the skills they need for our modern workforce. And it's so important. It's exciting to be able to show you some of the innovative programs our schools and businesses are creating for students here.
Prime Minister Modi is scheduled to have a private dinner with the Bidens at the White House. He will attend a state dinner after addressing Congress and holding a rare press conference with U.S. President Joe Biden. Washington wants New Delhi to be a strategic counterweight to China and sees India as an important partner. The Indian Prime Minister is seeking to raise the influence that India, the world's most populous country and the world's largest democracy, has on the world stage. The U.S. companies are also welcoming Modi warmly.
We will be announcing soon a new innovation center in India. With Applied Materials, we'll also bring global partners into this new innovation center. And this innovation center will really be focused on innovation in the equipment. And we have very high confidence that working together with India, we can create a tremendous success.
Now, Prime Minister Modi's U.S. visit is expected to give India access to important American technologies. Washington rarely shares with non-allies. Now, the two countries are working together on advanced tech from AI to semiconductor chips and quantum computing, especially in the defense sector. The Biden administration is all set to sign a deal that would allow U.S.-based General Electric to produce engines for military aircraft on the Indian soil. While India can manufacture jets domestically, it is keen to get the technical know-how to make the aircraft engines. India intends to produce more than 350 fighter jets for its Air Force and Navy over the next 2 decades, which could be powered by the GE 414. Meanwhile, another expected announcement is India's purchase of 31 armed MQ-9B Sea Guardian drones made by the General Atomics worth $3 billion. On June 23rd, the Indian Prime Minister will be hosted by the U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris and U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken. Modi will also address U.S. CEOs at a Friday reception as the American companies plan new investments in India. Now, the India-US bond is underpinned by not just global politics, but also business and economics. Washington and New Delhi have been moving closer for over 2 decades now. The successive U.S. presidents have displayed bipartisan support for stronger ties with the emerging Asian economy and regional power. U.S. President Joe Biden has built on that legacy and only expanded the cooperation forward. The trade between US and India in 2022 climbed to a record $191 billion. The two nations have launched a cooperative technology initiative with eyes on future development between New Delhi and Washington, D.C. And prior to Prime Minister Modi and President Biden's state dinner at the White House, WION's principal diplomatic correspondent Siddhant Sibal sends us this report from the southern lawns of the White House. Take a look.
We're inside the White House campus. The Indian Prime Minister will be accorded a welcome here, and of course we know that the focus of the visit is how both India and United States cement their relationship. Essentially, focus will be on areas like defense, on critical technologies, but the big celebration of this relationship happens during the visit of the Indian Prime Minister. This is an official visit, so the Biden administration has accorded the highest honor on the visiting Indian Prime Minister, Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The visit started from New York, where we saw the Yoga Day celebration, but now it will be hard diplomacy here in Washington. Siddhant Sibal for WION at the White House in Washington.
For more on this, our principal diplomatic correspondent Siddhant Sibal is joining us live from Washington, D.C. Hello, Siddhant. Now, this is Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's first state visit to the United States of America. U.S. President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden received the Indian Prime Minister at the White House just a short while ago. We spoke about that. But talk to us about the significance of this visit and how it cements stronger ties between Washington and New Delhi.
Well, let me first start with the mood on the ground. A lot of excitement. In fact, we've just reached Washington and we saw the city being decked up in the Indian national flag and, of course, the American flag as well. That shows the official visit, the diplomatic protocol being accorded. And we were just at the White House where the state dinner is underway. In fact, the American leader, the American president has given gifts to the Indian Prime Minister, details of which have been just released by the White House. And of course, if you talk about the situation, it's a very, very rainy Washington as well. Now the focus shifts to the guard of honor and of course the conversation both leaders are going to have on a Thursday. The focus will be on how India and the United States cement their relationship. As you pointed out, there will be several announcements, including the GE deal, manufacturing of jet engines, and also when it comes to the Predator drone deal. But all in all through the visit, we will see celebration of India-US relationship, a relationship that has grown leaps and bounds. And focus, of course, will be as to how India and United States form a relationship which is based on trust and also appreciation of each other's concerns, values and divergences as well. In fact, even as we speak, it's pretty windy, as you can see behind me. The big focus is as to how the guard of honor takes place tomorrow morning in a very windy Washington, D.C.
Right, Siddhant, we absolutely see the weather worsening out there. But you mentioned that a state dinner is currently taking place. But Prime Minister Modi will also be addressing the Congress later today. A rare honor indeed. With this, the Indian PM will join an exclusive group of leaders, including Winston Churchill and Nelson Mandela, who have twice addressed the Congress.
Well, yes, you're correct on that. In fact, this is the second time the Indian Prime Minister addresses the US Congress, and he's the only Indian Prime Minister to address the US Congress twice. Previously, there have been Indian Prime Ministers who have addressed the Congress, but a second time, it's a rare honor. But essentially, everyone will be closely watching as to what the Prime Minister has to say, because every word he speaks there will be something that not only will be weighed here in United States but also across the world. Something that the US lawmakers will be keen to hear is India's stance on Russia. Now, we know when it comes to China, both India and United States have a common viewpoint, a very aggressive China with India with the United States. But when it comes to Russia, we know that there are strong divergences. India has a very good and time-tested relationship with Kremlin, something that India continues to grow, especially when it comes to energy. Any word essentially when it comes to ongoing conflict is something that the US lawmakers are going to discuss. What the US lawmakers are keen that India condemns Russia for the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. That's unlikely to happen. India has time and again said that dialogue and diplomacy is the only way forward when it comes to resolving this conflict. And as the Indian Prime Minister last year in Samarkand said to the Russian president that this is not an era of war. This is something that has reverberated since then. Several world leaders have in fact quoted the Indian Prime Minister on that. Will the Indian Prime Minister reiterate that, or he will go an extra mile? Will he say words which might be music to the ears of the Americans? That is something that will be closely noticed as the Indian Prime Minister addresses the Congress later today, Indian Standard Time.
Yes, Dan, let's also talk business now. Prime Minister Modi also met some prominent business leaders in Washington, D.C., including CEOs Micron Technology and General Electric. What kind of big-ticket announcements are we expecting in the defense, semiconductor and technology sector? In fact, the Indian Prime Minister has met many of these business leaders, and the readout has just been put with the CEO of General Electric, with which the readout states, the Indian readout, that the Indian Prime Minister discussed the General Electric's greater technological collaboration to promote manufacturing in India. That has been the emphasis by the Indian side several times. India wants make in India. India wants countries to invest in India. In fact, as Elon Musk said yesterday, that the Indian Prime Minister has been doing a great job in terms of calling for investment in his country, that is India. And that is a message that also will be sent to business leaders here in Washington. He will be meeting more business leaders on a Friday, but essentially all through the week, whether it's New York, whether it's here in Washington, trade dominates the part of discussion. In fact, United States is the largest trading partner of India, and trade has grown, especially in a post-pandemic world. Also, both countries are keen on working on making sure the supply chains are diversified, because so far it has been seen the supply chains were excessively dependent on China. And during the COVID crisis, that is something that pinched many countries. So focus is on diversification of supply chains and also de-risking the economies when it comes to China. The excessive dependency on China is something that bothers several countries, including India and United States. There are several other platforms as well, for example, I2U2, Quad, in which focus has been from trade to security, and we will see more details being put out. In fact, there will be a joint press conference by the leaders of India and the United States, and we will get to know as to what the leaders have to say. The Indian Prime Minister is expected to take questions during that press conference along with the US President Joe Biden. Right, Dan, looks like the Indian Prime Minister has a power-packed schedule in the US. But thanks very much for joining us in this hour. That was Siddhant Sibal joining us live from Washington, D.C. Thanks very much.